Right across Australia, there is a growing shortage of homes. In fact, many are unaffordable for residents, with the cost of living and shortage of homes constantly being the problem. In this video, I'll be talking about the rising housing crisis throughout the country, implementation of advanced Excel functions, the pivot tables and pivot charts that help us visualize data more effectively. Hello, my name is Kavish. I'm a third-year commerce student majoring in business analytics. This is my busa2020 project aimed at addressing the housing crisis and homelessness within Australia. Okay. Now, the Australian Bureau of Statistics statistically derives that individuals not having suitable accommodation alternatives have inadequate dwelling or have limited control to exercise social relations in this space are homeless individuals. In 2025, the Australian government faced criticism due to the increasing population, causing many to be homeless in the country, a real-world problem. Homelessness needs to be reduced, and the implementation of pivot tables and pivot charts simplifies raw data to understand key statistical measures. Now, according to the 2021 census, around 122,000 Australians faced an increasing rate of homelessness, of which 56% were male, 21% were aged between 25 to 34, and an additional 20% were Aboriginal. This information has been confirmed by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. Now, you may ask, what is a pivot table? What is its purpose? Well, a pivot table is an interactive tool used to summarize large and multiple data sets to convert them into filtered data to tailor to one's needs. It also transforms raw data into visualizations for improved understanding of any trends or patterns in data, engaging the audience with the information that matters. The significance of pivot tables and pivot charts is how easy it is to understand any analytical similarities or differences. It also enhances by switching values, groups of data, and categories through the integration of Excel mathematical functions and numerical values within the pivot tables itself to help differentiate between averages, sum, count, percentage, and so forth. Ultimately, pivot charts also allow these trends to be displayed in illustrations, as assisting to navigate across various categories in storytelling. For example, if you have a dataset that spans across 20 categories with many factors involved in the data itself, pivot tables and pivot charts will assist in simplifying the data to highlight the key information across a period of time for a specified category, like the growing cost of housing. Okay, now let's have a look at a few data sets over here borrowed from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The first one is a housing census, just to describe the housing crisis in 2021. Measures the type of tenure that people reside in and their income measured in the columns. Now here we have the estimating homelessness census measuring from 2006 to 2021 in percentage and population across various categories from the type of homeless variation that they're in, their age, their gender, their indigenous background or ethnicity, and the state or territory of usual residence. Now, looking at this first one over here, let's have let me just insert a pivot table. So you go insert and insert pivot table, select this, you go OK. Now, what we're going to do for this one here is we're going to click on income and drag it to values. So all the incomes present here, we will come here and grab it to values over here. All right. Tick, 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 tick. Now, what this has done here is it shows us the grand total per income across all types of tenures. Now, to also understand this further, we have to go and bring the type of tenure to filters. Now, look at what happens over here. Now, if I bring the values down to rows, you can see that in a much more neater format, we understand the total types of venues with a population as per the income. Now, we can insert a slicer to variate our, so the slicer for the type of tenure. Now have a look at what happens to this data set if I was to click on the particular, so if I was to click on, say, occupied, other, and they're adjusted accordingly. And I can just go and select on all of them instead as well. So that's how the numbers play along according to the slicer. Now, what we can do as well, we can change this from sum to show average or count. The way you can do that is go and click on the values here and select average. This would change the average of not stated. As you can see, the number had there changed. And for the sake of this video, we keep everything constantly the same, and henceforth I'm going to change it back to sum. Now we're going to go into this raw data here, and I'll just show you another pivot table I created using the states and then the type of homelessness dwellings that people reside in. They're not. Now what we can do here, select on the data set. I'm going to make this pivot table look a bit more interesting and easier to understand. Is measuring the percentage of people in respective accommodation or dwellings and per state. So once I do this, helps us understand that when it's greener, it's the rate of homelessness is lower, which is good. The higher it is, the worse off homelessness is in that area. Now, we can understand that the Northern Territory severely crowded dwellings has 76%, which is a lot. And as you can see in temporary lodging, there is very less percentage, which is good. And we can also understand that the state or the territory consistently with lower colors would be either ACT, New South Wales, or Victoria as well. Now let's have a look at this data set here. It looks at the cultural background, specifically Aboriginal and non-Indigenous. Some people have also not mentioned their cultural background, which is also included in this data set, across with the population number of people from 2006 to 2021. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select on conditional formatting again, highlighting the whole numbers, and I'm going to select on data bars this time. What this is going to do is it's going to show us. I'm going to change the color of this. Sorry. Going to show us that in which category and which year was the highest rate of homelessness. We can understand that in 2021, on Indigenous people, a total of 81,566 experienced homelessness. All right, now moving on to pivot charts. We'll start off with this one over here. What we can do is go click on the data, insert, pivot chart. Now this brings up with a pivot chart over here, which we'll just expand and zoom into. Now the legend comes up over here, however, it is missing its labels. So I'll just go and quickly insert the labels. Click design, and then we go insert chart title. of chart, we will go with the running homelessness. Okay. Now this is the chart title. To insert the axis, we would go here and insert that this is state or territory, the residence, and then vertically we will go that this is percentage of population. Okay. Now to understand, this is how a complete pivot table and pivot chart would look like. All right. Now moving on to this one over here. The way we can do this is going insert and clicking on pivot chart. As you can see, it creates it over here. And then we can go population across all 10 years. The axes will be labeled income and population. Y-axis would be population and x-axis would be income level. All right, now just to summarize that this data here, all of these data sets over here, they explore how they explore the significance of understanding data better by through application of pivot tables and pivot charts.